Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. All right, well, 2022 is going to be a critical year for America. AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, along with their nearly 2 million members. The fight to stop out-of-control spending in the president's Build Back Better scheme is far from over, and Congress is plotting more legislation that could hurt our seniors. The midterm elections will be a battle for freedom versus socialism. Unlike liberal groups, AMAC is America's conservative, action-oriented 50-plus organization fighting hard every day here in Washington and across the nation for our seniors. So I'm urging you to choose AMAC now. You will receive all of the great membership benefits, including AMAC discounts on hotels, travels, and restaurants, and your membership will support your conservative values. So go to amac.us/Ellis. That's amac.us/ELLIS to become an AMAC member now.
As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Well, hello, friends, and welcome to a very special episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. As you know, occasionally there are headlines that come out on a Friday that are so important that we don't want to wait until Monday to cover them. And today, the bigger issue beyond all of the news and the things that really the mainstream media and the leftists don't want to talk about is this incredibly important election integrity win out of the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. So the case here, and I have it with me, it's a 141-page ruling from the Supreme Court of Wisconsin. It is Teigen versus the Wisconsin Election Commission. So this is incredibly important for several reasons. First of all, this vindicates and validates what Team Trump was arguing in November of 2020 and the post-election challenges, that the executive branches of these swing states, including Wisconsin, had violated state law that was established by the state legislatures in the administration of the 2020 election. Now, as you know, most of our lawsuits, almost all of them, were kicked out on the basis of standing. And actually, in this case, the Wisconsin Election Commission had also attempted to kick out this particular lawsuit that was brought by 2 Wisconsin voters on the basis of standing, saying that they had no stake in the outcome of this case and did not want to reach the merits. Thankfully, the Wisconsin Supreme Court in their analysis said, no, we reject that argument. Of course, voters have a stake in the outcome of the administration of an election. So they actually reached the merits on this case. So imagine, if you will, if Team Trump had been able to actually argue on the merits of our cases. Litigation takes a long time, but we would have actually been able to bring forth the evidence, that we had at the time, which includes those 9,000 pages of documents, including affidavits and sworn statements from election officials, poll watchers, voters, and others that we had in November 2020 that I submitted to the January 6th committee, who has now just completely gone silent. They don't want to talk about the evidence. They don't want to talk about the fact that these election officials and the executive branches violated state law in the administration of the 2020 election. So why is this so important? Because finally, the Wisconsin Supreme Court is acknowledging that the executive branch, through this unelected bureaucratic agency, the Wisconsin Election Commission, violated state law in promulgating their rules that put out over 500 drop boxes that were against state law. And so ultimately what happened, and I want to read from a Breitbart piece because I think this summarizes this really well. It said, Wisconsin Supreme Court ballot drop boxes violate state law. So the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled 4-3 on Friday that absentee ballot drop boxes are illegal under Wisconsin law, vindicating a legal argument advanced by the Trump 2020 campaign, though the ruling will govern elections in 2022 and in the future and cannot change previous election results. So this is Breitbart. This isn't just my opinion as a former member of the Trump legal team. So this is now reading from the actual case from the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Quote, this case concerns two documents created by the employees of the Wisconsin Election Commission, known as the WEC. These documents authorize municipal clerks and local election officials to establish ballot drop boxes. And according to one of the documents, and this is from the Wisconsin Election Commission, a drop box is secure, locked structure operated by local election officials. Voters may deposit their ballot in a drop box at any time after they receive it in the mail, up to the time of the last ballot collection on election day. Ballot drop boxes can be staffed or unstaffed, temporary or permanent, unquote. The Wisconsin Supreme Court opinion goes on to say the other document from the WEC adds a family member or another person may return the ballot on behalf of the voter, i.e., an agent of the voter may place the voter's absentee ballot in a drop box. So this is what's known as ballot harvesting, or in the instance of illegal ballots, ballot trafficking. And that's really concerning. So the Breitbart piece goes on to say the use of ballot drop boxes was one of the 4 issues that former President Donald Trump litigated in Wisconsin against current President Joe Biden during the 2020 election. But in that case, Justice Brian Hagedorn broke with the three conservatives, siding with the 3 liberal justices in a 4-3 decision to hold on December 14th, 2020. We all remember that, the day the Electoral College cast the ballots that made Biden the next president. That was when the certifications were actually given to Congress. But of course, they were opened and counted on January 6th. So December 14th is the day the Electoral College meets and casts their ballots, that made Biden the next president under what is called the doctrine of latches, or that it's too late in the game to rule on the legality of the ballots cast in November 2020, refusing to rule on whether or not those ballots were illegal. The 3 conservative justices vigorously dissented in that case, Trump versus Biden. So again here, imagine if this one swing justice had actually said, you know what, it's really important. And of course, the candidate himself has a stake in the outcome of an election and to make sure that the election is properly administrated according to state law. And obviously, the Wisconsin Election Commission, as an unelected bureaucratic arm of the executive branch, they are now going around and issuing these unpromulgated rules that are allowing illegal ballot drop boxes to then be all over Wisconsin. And that was a violation of state law. So this is not a Trump versus Biden, conservative versus liberal, Democrat versus Republican issue. This is all about fairness and the rule of law. This is all about what the U.S. Constitution says in Article 2, Section 1.2, that it is the state legislatures that select the manner by which electors to the Electoral College are chosen. And so it's all up to what the state legislature says in state law about the administration of an election. And of course, voters here have a stake in the outcome of an election, because when you have an administration that violates state law and you have these unsecured ballot drop boxes that are illegal, then any votes that are put into those ballot drop boxes are by definition cast illegally. It's not saying, and I want to be clear about this, it's not saying that the person who put in their ballot is necessarily um, a, a voter that is not otherwise casting a legal ballot. It's that you have to, as a legal voter, if you yourself are a legal voter in the state of Wisconsin, you have to cast your ballot in a manner that is in accordance with state law. And so anyone who put their ballot into these illegal drop boxes is violating state law. So this is exactly what Team Trump argued to the state legislatures in November of 2020, that the election was irredeemably compromised, because as soon as you put in a ballot that has a ballot inside of an envelope, that envelope has a signature on it. When you put it into an illegal drop box, so therefore the ballot itself is now illegally cast, then, when an election official takes that ballot and they remove that ballot from the envelope, now it is a spoiled ballot. You can never put the ballot back together with the envelope. So you don't know which ballots came from which envelopes and which ballots came from these illegal drop boxes, because Wisconsin did not separate them from these illegal drop boxes compared to legally cast ballots. And this is why it is so concerning. And I've had so many people already today ask me, well, why wasn't this decided in November of 2020? Well, as Breitbart rightly points out, Trump versus Biden, and the case that our local counsel on behalf of the Donald J. Trump for President Inc., the Trump 2020 campaign, and its candidate, then President Donald Trump, attempted to litigate this issue. And these three conservative justices said, of course, this should be litigated. Of course, there's a stake in the outcome of the election for a candidate. And of course, we should know if all of the other people who voted legally according to state statutes, they are now being disenfranchised by all of the people who cast their ballots illegally. And now, you may be saying, well, what about the people who didn't know this? And I'm just a regular voter. I do everything according to what I've been told by the Wisconsin Election Commission. I go and turn it in at a ballot drop box. I had no idea. Well, that's true, but this is why it's so important to litigate up front, and it's so important to the outcome of the election, and it's incredibly important to make sure that everyone is told accurately what state law is. And this is why the Wisconsin Election Commission is rightly held in place and held accountable to their violation of state law by promulgating these rules that allowed for these drop boxes in the first place. And it also, we all saw the movie 2000 Mules. These are the types of instances that create these types of problems, where people who do traffic in ballots have the means and opportunity to go and put in ballots that are by definition cast illegally and essentially stuff the ballot box. And it gets even worse than this, because I'm going to read you something that came out from my friends at the Thomas More Society, which, by the way, there's been a lot of fake news surrounding that. I am a special counsel for the Thomas More Society, solely for the purpose of representing Pastor John MacArthur during the church shutdown cases. Because during the aftermath of the 2020 election, I was the senior legal advisor for the Donald J. Trump for President Inc. campaign. And as a nonprofit, the Thomas More Society could not have me overlap in that. So I have never been a counsel for the Thomas More Society on any election related cases. So everything that the leftists try to slam and, disbar me and all this other kind of nonsense, a lot of it, most of it, probably 99% of it, is either fake news or they're intentionally lying to you. Just like they're saying that we lost, 63, 65, I don't even know what the count is, cases. Totally not true. These were not heard on the merits, and we, the Trump campaign, did not even file 63 cases. So Trump versus Biden in Wisconsin, that was kicked out based on standing. If the three conservative justices had actually been able to have our case heard in Wisconsin, we may have gotten a different outcome for the state of Wisconsin in the aftermath of 2020, because they would have been able to hear that on the merits rather than disregarding it based on standing, heard it on the merits, seen the violation of the Wisconsin Election Commission against state law. And this outcome, then they would have had to deal with this prior to the Electoral College voting and those certifications being sent to Congress. So that is really unfortunate. And again, a lot of what I've seen the leftists slamming this ruling for today has not been any sort of argument that the Wisconsin Election Commission was right, that they didn't violate state law. A lot of it is just saying literally, F conservatives, F the Wisconsin Supreme Court, F Team Trump. Yeah, that's a brilliant argument, guys. That has nothing to do whatsoever with the law. It has nothing to do with state law. As I've continued to say since November 3rd of 2020, the campaign at that point was over. I can advocate for the candidate of my choosing, but as an attorney, I am going to advocate that the rules are followed and that the administration of the election is done according to state law. And these types of challenges absolutely can and should be heard. These are things that are incredibly important to preservation of our electoral system, to preservation of the rule of law, and making sure that no illegal ballots are counted. Remember, we said every legal vote should count and count fairly. Notice the sleight of hand that the Biden administration kept doing. And then it was just, President-elect Biden, all of his people in the aftermath of the 2020 election kept saying all votes should count. Yeah, they were talking about wanting all of these illegally cast ballots to count even back then. Did they know? My guess is definitely yes. All right, but this gets even worse because, again, going back to the Thomas More Society, their attorneys, including my friend, not co-counsel in this case, not anything to do with me, but my friend Eric Cardall, who is an advocate and an attorney for the Thomas More Society, they sent out a press release today that is really important. And I want to read this to you because they said in the headline here is Wisconsin Supreme Court decision banning absentee ballot drop boxes is just the tip of the iceberg. So they go on to say the Wisconsin Supreme Court, by a 4-3 decision in Teigen versus Wisconsin Election Commission, has determined that unmanned absentee ballot drop boxes are illegal under Wisconsin election law. The decision, handed down on July 8th, today, 2022, in a lawsuit brought by voters, brings resolution to a key issue in the accusations of election bribery that originally arose in the state's November 2020 general election. Thomas More Society attorneys will now be able to deliver wins to voters who have filed lawsuits about drop boxes in the circuit courts of 5 counties and who have accused the Wisconsin Election Commission administrator, Megan Wolf, of violating her duties under Wisconsin law. So this is a quote from Thomas More Society Special Counsel Eric Cardall in response to the state's high court ruling. Quote, this decision reveals just the tip of the iceberg in Wisconsin's election integrity problems. And he goes on to explain how an agreement existed between the Center for Tech and Civic Life and Wisconsin's 5 largest cities to violate the state law banning absentee ballot drop boxes in 2020. The worst of it, Cardall added, is that it was all coordinated with the blessing of the Wisconsin Election Commission. And so this press release, and I'm just quoting from this, it says, with the support of the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision, the Thomas More Society's attorneys are charging that an illegal agreement existed between the Center for Tech and Civic Life and Wisconsin's 5 largest cities to pay for and use the legally unauthorized absentee ballot drop boxes in the November 2020 election. Additionally, the Wisconsin Election Commission's illegal guidance on the use of unmanned absentee ballot drop boxes in March and August 2020 was also found to be legally unauthorized by the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision, as it was simultaneous with the illegal agreement between the Center for Tech and Civic Life and the cities identified as the quote-unquote Wisconsin 5, Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, Racine, and Kenosha counties. So the Center for Tech and Civic Life is a nonprofit Chicago-based organization led and staffed by former Democratic activists and funded by billionaire Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. So we're getting into Zuckerbucks, and his wife, Priscilla Chan, to influence the 2020 election. This partisan special interest group poured more than $3 million into gaining access to election administration processes during the 2020 presidential election. So Cardall goes on and summarized, quote, obviously, the Center for Tech and Civic Life and the Wisconsin Elections Commission and the Wisconsin 5 mayors were in cahoots to purchase and use the illegal drop boxes in the November 2020 election. Now, all the Wisconsin state courts need to do to clean up Wisconsin's elections is to follow the money associated with the privately financed, legally unauthorized drop boxes, unquote. So this goes on to say, I mean, can you believe this stuff? This is exactly the kind of shenanigans that were going on, why the 2020 election was irredeemably compromised. This is so disgusting, and this should infuriate every single voter that this kind of stuff was going on. So this press release goes on to say, under the Center for Tech and Civic Life's, quote, Wisconsin Safe Voting Plan, dated June 15, 2020, the Zuckerberg-funded organization transferred $216,500 for absentee ballot drop boxes to be used in the 5 cities. The agreement signed by the center and the mayors of Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, Racine, and Kenosha clearly states the intention to purchase these illegally authorized unmanned drop boxes. The Wisconsin Election Commission's illegal advice to the municipal clerks in the Wisconsin 5 cities instructed them to use these legally unauthorized unmanned absentee ballot drop boxes and was dated for March 31st and August 19th, 2020. This was after COVID, simultaneous with the June 15, 2020 Wisconsin Safe Voting Plan. The Wisconsin Election Commission's failure to cite specific legal authority in its 2 advisory opinions was a violation of its statutory duties. So, quote from Cardall, the fact that the legally unauthorized advisory opinions were issued simultaneously with the Center for Tech and Civic Life's agreement with the Wisconsin 5 cities mayors to purchase and use the unmanned absentee ballot drop boxes is strong evidence that these illegally unauthorized coordination to violate Wisconsin's election laws. And the Wisconsin Election Commission could not actually have cited any legal authority to use those unmanned absentee ballot drop boxes because Wisconsin statutes read the opposite, that such ballot boxes are, quote, legally unauthorized, a situation which has since been validated and reinforced by the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision today. So this press release goes on to say the $216,500 agreed upon to pay for absentee ballot drop boxes is just one line item in the total funding of the $6.3 million and more promised to those cities by the Center for Tech and Civic Life for aiding by the illegal plan to focus on delivering votes from certain targeted demographic groups. So Cardall described the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision as yet another building block in revealing the massive scheme on the part of the Center for Tech and Civic Life to usurp the administration of the election, a core traditional governmental function, under the guise of COVID-19 prevention and via the illegal dumping of private money into municipal processes. The Center for Tech and Civic Life handed control of the 2020 election in Wisconsin over to private partisan interests in the form of its quote unquote partners. Quote, yes, the 2020 election is over and done with, Cardall observed, but it is incumbent upon us to ensure that the corruption that infected Wisconsin's voting process in November 2020 is rooted out and that the state's election integrity is preserved. It is especially important that the Wisconsin Election Commission, the entity charged with safeguarding the state's election integrity, be above reproach. Wisconsin's voters deserve to know the truth, and they need to be assured that the corruption has been eliminated, allowing for fair and honest elections from this point forward. So this type of dark money analysis and this type of obvious now corruption that happened in Wisconsin, and we believe and attempted to litigate in the other 5 swing states, is shocking. It's devastating to election integrity, and it has to be turned around before November of 2020. We have only 4 months until November 2022, but we have to make sure that these types of illegal activities that violate the state law, as Eric Cardall said, are rooted out, and that we preserve and protect free and fair elections. And so for everyone who continues to slam Team Trump and say, oh, you losers, whatever, I don't even care, because you are being proven wrong. The truth is continuing to come out. And all that the Democrats did was this grand scheme, as Eric describes it, to take over the administration of the 2020 election by partisan private interests and to violate state law through the administration of the 2020 election. You can't go against the law. You can't go against the rules. It is U.S. constitutional. It is state law, state constitution constitutional. And this is just the bedrock of what our free and fair elections are supposed to be designed with. And so I am so grateful that the Wisconsin Supreme Court had the courage, it's not a partisan interest, but had the courage to not kick this out just based on standing or some of these other threshold fluffy sorts of objections, but to actually look at this on the merits and say, yes, sorry, Wisconsin Election Commission, you violated state law, state statute in the administration of the 2020 election. So I know a lot of you out there are thinking, well, okay, great, but this should have come 2 years ago. Yeah, I agree with you. I know it's frustrating, but the great thing is that a lot of this is starting to be rooted out, and there will be more and more and more that continues to come out. And I will be here to give you all of the news, all of the truth about election integrity. We will be relentlessly truthful here. I will not back down. I will not be silenced. I won't be intimidated by all of these, wacko leftists that are trying to, say all kinds of negative, false things about me. Because election integrity matters. The bedrock and foundation of our American system of government is that we, the people, get to select and prefer our leaders, and we elect our state representatives, who then codify the manner by which every state and local and also federal elections are run, including our electoral system. And there are so many Democrats that are panicking right now because they are saying that they did not get away with this, and they will not be able to violate state law in the same manner 2022 and beyond. So this is hopeful, friends. This is encouraging. And we need to continue to advocate for the truth, for election integrity, and support these lawsuits from all of our election integrity partners. These things matter. And these things are critical to making sure that our wonderful, amazing America will be preserved and protected for future generations. And you may be asking, okay, so the Wisconsin Supreme Court then and the other courts in the judiciary, including the United States Supreme Court in the Texas versus Pennsylvania case, refused to hear these cases on the merits, and they kicked them out based on standing or other threshold issues, refused to hear them on the merits. So was that the only option? Well, no, this is why I continue to advocate that the state legislatures, they know their own law. They're the ones who designed this. They are the ones who are ultimately responsible for it, not only under their state constitution, but the U.S. Constitution when it comes to the presidential election. They are the ones that ultimately have the authority to make sure that the election is administered according to their own state law. So this is why I advocated to the state legislatures in those swing states that they needed to look at how the election was administered. They needed to look at the evidence that even we had at that time and make a finding and determination that the election was irredeemably compromised, that the administration of the election did not happen according to state law. And then they could, at that point, reclaim their delegates. And then, according to the U.S. Constitution in Article 2, Section 1.2, they could determine as the people's elected representatives what they wanted to do with their state certifications. And that was ultimately, that was the only opportunity that we would have had as a country to correct this corruption then when the judiciary was unwilling to hear it. Now, of course, the left has gone and said, oh, you're trying to influence the legislatures and all this. Well, appealing to a state legislator to do their job, of course, is influencing them, but it's asking them to do their job. Anytime you lobby a state legislator or you ask them to do their job is attempting to influence them. But it was attempting to ask them to follow the U.S. Constitution, follow the law in their state, and actually be the constitutionally appointed entity that is ultimately responsible for their electoral delegates. That didn't happen. It should have happened. And I am so disappointed in the Republican-led majority of those swing states that refused to do their constitutionally delegated duty without the cover of the judiciary, like what we have now in Wisconsin. If the Wisconsin state legislature had been willing to look at this in November 2020, what the Wisconsin Supreme Court has actually said now, then we would have been in a much different posture moving forward and actually in the moment while we still had time correcting and making sure that the election was administered correctly, legally, and constitutionally. That is something that is not a partisan issue. It should be something that every American wants and every American demands. Election integrity. And the state legislators, they are the ones that ultimately failed. The judicial branch failed, yes, but ultimately the state legislatures failed because they were too weak, they were too cowardly to stand up and do their duty and look at their own state law and compare and contrast that with the administration of the election. If the Wisconsin state legislature had done that, we'd be in a much different situation now, because that would have encouraged the other state legislatures, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Michigan. We would have had then pressure on those legislatures to also look at the administration of their election. And in fact, that's what the audits are all about, right? Is making sure that we can look now, every state, at the administration of every election and make sure that it's done according to state law. That should not be a controversial statement. But unfortunately, in this highly partisan political circus that is the Democratic left, that statement is controversial because they know that the election was not administered according to state law, and they don't want you to find out about it. But that's why I'm very proud of the Wisconsin Supreme Court today. So I will see you on Monday. This is an important case. If you want to read the entire thing, again, it is the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, Teigen versus the Wisconsin Election Commission. The case number is 2022 AP 91. I have a link to it on my Twitter feed. Make sure you are subscribed to this podcast, Rumble, YouTube, or anywhere that you stream the audio. I'm Jenna Ellis. I'm relentlessly truthful, and I'll see you soon. Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. I also want to talk about another great American who is the sponsor of this podcast, and that, of course, is my good friend Mike Lindell. He has been canceled out of so many box stores for simply standing up for his own political opinion. And disagree or not, or support him or not, it is a fundamental right of every American to be able to voice their opinion, and that absolutely includes politics. That absolutely includes issues that are central to our culture. That includes faith. Mike is such a very sincere Christian, and I am proud to consider him a friend, and he is, of course, a friend of this show. So right now, there is a special on mypillow.com. Click on the new radio listener specials. Get deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including a great towel set, which is a 6-piece set. It includes 2 bath, 2 hand towels, 2 washcloths, made in the USA, regularly $109.99, now just $39.99, but you have to use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna. That tells Mike that you listen to this show, you're happy that he is a sponsor of this show, and you will get great discounts, but use the promo code Jenna, that's Jenna, either at mypillow.com or call 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna.